Welcome to Founders Future, the podcast hosted by Closers.io, where we dive deep into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for both themselves and their companies. I'm your host, Elliot Boll, and in each episode, we'll uncover the stories behind successful businesses, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future expansion. Today, we're excited to be joined by Aaron Schmookler, the co-founder and CEO of the Yes Works. We'll be learning more about his founding story and getting a glimpse into his plans for the future. So let's jump right in, Aaron. Welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks, Elliot. Glad to be here, and I've enjoyed our conversation so far. So I expect it's gonna be fun now that folks are listening.
Oh, yeah, if you thought that was fun. Well, yeah, I'll try and be more professional. So, Aaron, a question I'd like to start off with is understanding behind the Yes Works. What I'm after is like the flame or the spark. Like, what inspired you to start this business and give our audience a flavor of some of the challenges you solve?
Yeah, that's easy. A little over 11 years ago now, I was doing work that I love in a job that I hated. And my wife told me she was pregnant, and that changed everything, of course. And one of the things that it changed for me is that I immediately thought, I do not want my kid to inherit a world where it's possible to hate your job even if you love your work. And I hated my job for a number of reasons, including how I was treated. I also hated my job because of how many people I was surrounded by who were just phoning it in and not doing good work and resenting good leaders. There were some good leaders in our organization. It was really an atrocious situation. And I vowed to change culture in work. What's the prevailing work culture in our country for my daughter? And the great grace is that along the way, I'm improving people's work lives as we go and helping companies to get better results from the folks who draw a paycheck.
See, that's phenomenal. That's a bounce out of bed kind of idea. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing. The, I mean, to me, it's fascinating. You spoke about culture and then changing the culture. It sounds like a really difficult thing to do for humans to change, let alone organizations. And culture's kind of this weird stuff in between. So, can you help us understand, maybe from like your top 5% customers who are able to put the great things in place and change their culture? What do they have that maybe just ordinary customers that don't excite you so much don't have?
I'm gonna try to my best to make sure that I actually answer your question eventually. Let me start with people believe that it takes a long time to change your culture. And as far as I'm concerned, your culture is the set of contagious behaviors and attitudes in your company. You can change that overnight. Now, right, one bit of evidence for that is that if my front door gets locked and I lose the key, well, right now my habit is to come to the front door and I walk in the front door of my house. But if I couldn't do that, I would very quickly, I would immediately start walking around the house and going to the back door. So you can change the behaviors and attitudes in your company overnight. What takes time is cementing the new behaviors. If my front door were to be blocked and locked, I'd probably come to the front door and go, oh, yeah, I forgot a number of times. That doesn't mean that the culture isn't different. It just means that it takes a little while. It takes time to cement those new behaviors. I'll give you an example of a company that we worked with recently. They were losing people at an alarming rate. They were down to half of their staff. And these folks both implement and sell. It's a company in the trades. And so the folks on the front lines are executing and they're executing what they sell. And they were concerned about losing all these people, as of course, as you might imagine. They didn't know where they were going or why they were losing them. And we helped them figure out what are the cultural problems that are driving that loss. They are now having some of the best sales months in their history. The bleeding has stopped in terms of losing people. And they're achieving those sales results with a fraction of the people that they've had historically. And so as they grow, they're going to keep bringing out these new behaviors and these new attitudes that they have adopted and are cultivating. And they'll continue to be incredibly magnetic to the people that they bring in, so that they will increase in size. And as they increase in size, they will bring these new behaviors that are helping them sell well along with them as they go. And we're continuing to work together to help cement and expand on the work that we've already done.
Well, see, that's transformational. That's phenomenal. And I kind of want to double tap into you mentioned that's a customer story. You must have unique insights and perspective really from working with a bunch of different leaders, a bunch of different companies, and essentially observing the current state of their culture. What's a surprising lesson in leadership that, because you've been a leadership expert for a number of years, what's a surprising lesson that you learned, I guess, over the fairly recent period as it pertains to building cultures and great leadership teams?
Well, I'll tell you one of the lessons that keeps teaching itself to me is you may have seen the acronym WIIFM. Some people talk about it like it's a radio station, WIFM. It stands for What's in It for Me. And I used to be resentful that people didn't seem to, that I was leading, didn't want to do what I wanted them to do. I kept giving them all kinds of good reasons to do what I wanted them to do, and they would either resist or actively or resist passively, either way. And what remains remarkably true, and even earlier today, I was having a call with another leader who was struggling to get one of his salespeople to do the behaviors that are required for that role. And this is true and acknowledged in sales, as I'm sure you've seen. People buy for their own reasons. They don't buy for the salesperson's reasons. They don't buy for our reasons. And similarly, your people do what they do for their reasons, not for yours as a leader. And that, for the enlightened and effective leader, is not a bug, it's a feature.
See that? I mean, yeah, you draw the parallel between sales and leadership. So for someone scratching their chin and almost feeling a little bit uncomfortable because they've come to the realization that maybe they're trying to get people to do stuff for their reasons, or their reasons dressed up in what they think could be a reason for the other person, what would you suggest as something that they should do, think about, write down, change to address that?
You got to understand what motivates John on your team, what motivates Sue. So in the call earlier today, this salesperson, was not a born and not originally for their career in sales. They're a PhD scientist. And this is a scientific organization that has as its mission, essentially, like, save the world from this kind of waste and that kind of waste that their clients are engaging with. And he was trying to motivate her using things like commissions to make cold calls. And she felt cold calls are beneath me. These selling behaviors that you want me to do, they're beneath me. I'm a PhD, for crying out loud. And my peers are, all of them, earning more than I am. They're not paid by commission. They're paid for their expertise. And so in these objections that she has to doing the sales behaviors are evident what motivates her. What's the WIFM? What's in it for me for her? And she got into this company in order to save the world, save the planet from this kind of chemical waste. And so one of the thing that he said was most valuable in our hour-long call was the idea that you could approach her, this woman with the PhD, to say, this company over here, they're wasting chemical and contributing to the death of the planet at this rate every single day. And so if we could help them reduce the waste by 40%, that delta today, if you don't bring them into the fold with us, that delta is on you. The delta tomorrow between what they're wasting today and what they could be wasting or not wasting tomorrow, that delta is on you. And so tapping into She's motivated by the desire to save the planet. And what, he was bringing up the desire to connect her to urgency. The urgency is never for her going to be about company revenues. That's too abstract for her. What's present and real for her is the pollution. And so let's get that connected. The urgency is about the today's pollution and tomorrow's pollution, not about the commissions that you might make today, because that's not what motivates her.
That's so powerful as a story for, I mean, each individual being motivated for different reasons. And that, I guess, for some of us might seem a little bit like, you use the word abstract, a little bit like almost esoterical or like a great meaning. But for that individual, that's the thing that connects, that drives, that motivates, that determines her behavior. So that was a great example. Now, looking forward, Aaron, I'm curious because we've seen technologies and AI, like everyone's talking about this stuff booming. We're seeing it boom. And one of the things that is in the picture in my eyes is like culture. So how do you anticipate challenges or success with culture evolving over the coming years with technology coming in at an aggressive rate?
Well, technology has been coming in at an aggressive rate for a long time, and admittedly, it's accelerating. And so that's been a culture challenge all along. You know, these things, the presence of these in the workplace is a challenge to culture. If we're going to have a connected culture, then it's imperative for us to put these aside. I know how tempted I am by the things that are happening on my computer. I've closed all of the windows on my computer aside from the one where you and I are interacting, simply so that they won't be distracting to me. And so there will be some challenge to integrate things like AI, especially as AI gets to be more and more agentic, I guess is the word, and capable of being more and more an entity with us. I often, while I was walking this morning, I was strategizing with ChatGPT. We were talking back and forth together. So we're going to have to figure out ways to integrate that. And we're also culturally probably going to have to find ways to not be sucked in. So that I was collaborating today with ChatGPT, I also need to make sure that I'm collaborating with my team, collaborating with my clients and my prospects and folks like you. So it's going to be about what are my values? And for our clients and for everybody, for the person who's listening, what are your values? And what structures and constraints do you put into your life in order to ensure that your values are being elevated?
I like you made it sound so simple, Aaron, with all of the
It is simple. It's very simple. And like so many things that matter, simple and hard.
Yeah, well, there you are. This conversation's absolutely flown by. So, I guess before we wrap up, we always like to ask the same question, the big heavy hitter. I mean, we've got a bunch of founders that are listening for this conversation right now, and you can give them one piece of advice to consider that could change their year, could change their life, could change the trajectory of how things are going in their business. What would you share?
I think ignorance is valuable. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I mean. If you had been able to lay out for me 11 years ago exactly how hard this was going to be to start and keep this business afloat and really get us through the doldrums that happen so often for early businesses. If I had really understood the challenge and didn't know the outcome, I probably wouldn't have done this. I would have said, nah, if it's that hard, I should probably just keep finding jobs to do to work for other people. So I appreciate that I was ignorant of that fact, because I'm also really grateful that I took this plunge. So, some people know how hard it is. And I think that there is value sometimes in saying to yourself, what if I knew nothing about what I know? I think this is one of the things that made me a good theater director. As you know, I used to be a theater director. And even though I've seen this scene that we're working on right now, the one that we're rehearsing right now, I've seen it 20 times because we've rehearsed it again and again. I could always look at it as if I had no clue what was going on. And I could see it as if ignorant. And so the advice that I guess I would give is look at every situation where you feel at all challenged or puzzled, not only with the knowledge and experience that you have, because that's valuable, also with that mind of wonder, as if you were ignorant and didn't know the rules, didn't know the things that you know, because that perspective also has value.
That's unique and brilliant. So thank you, Aaron. Just so I understand, and sorry for being a bit slow, you're basically saying that's kind of a mental model to go back to first principles, to be creative, to get rid of limiting beliefs. Is that kind of, can you expand a little bit?
You know, we write rules all the time for this is how to do things. At the end, when COVID began, for example, the thing that was working for me for a really long time, picking up the phone and calling business owners and CEOs at 7:30 in the morning, stopped working immediately. And I just kept operating as if I knew, because I did, that calling CEOs and business owners, potential prospects at 7:30 in the morning worked. And because it had worked for so long, it was hard for me to think to myself, okay, what if you know nothing? And just look at the last 2-3 weeks of phone calls and how many zero people you've spoken to. If I come at this from ignorance, then the information that's staring me in the face right now becomes much more consequential. And I get to learn from that. That's one of the ways in which this occurs. Does that help?
Yeah, that does. And sorry, I'm sure everyone else got it and thinking, oh, Elliot's being slow again. So I appreciate you, Aaron. Where can people find you or get in touch if they want to learn more about what you're up to, follow
Yeah.
your journey?
I am the only Aaron Schmookler on LinkedIn, so you can find me there pretty readily. And our website is theyesworks.com.
Incredible. Now, that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I want to thank Aaron for sharing not only his journey into entrepreneurship, but the insights in leadership that he shared throughout the conversation today. To our listeners, if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales. Until then, keep climbing and we'll see you on the next one.